Neglected warship infested with parasites. A human mechanic turns it into a superweapon. Its hull was scarred with battle wounds, deep scratches, and patches of rust that glinted faintly under the pale light of a dying star. Most of the galaxy had forgotten this ship, drifting in the outer rim, abandoned and supposedly worthless. "Looks like a grave," her co-pilot muttered over the comms, voice trembling slightly. Kira ignored him. Graves could hide treasures, and she had a nose for treasure. The galaxy underestimated humans all the time. That had always worked in her favor. The boarding hatch creaked open under her hands. Inside, darkness stretched like a wound. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of metal and decay. Kira flicked on her flashlight. Its beam cut through the gloom, revealing narrow corridors filled with broken consoles, shattered screens, and cables that dangled like dead vines. She moved carefully, every step echoing. This warship had been lost decades ago, a casualty of human expansion into the fringe. But something about it drew her in. It felt alive, not in a normal way but in a strange, pulsing way. Her stomach tightened when she saw the first signs, tiny, wriggling creatures crawling along the walls and consoles. They were small, no bigger than her hand, and semi-transparent. Their movements were strange, like they were sensing the metal and electricity, slipping along circuits and wires. Parasites. Her mind raced. She had dealt with alien infestations before, but this was different. Most were dangerous, yes, but controllable with the right tech. These seemed smarter. They didn't just feed, they integrated. They moved along the ship's circuits, following patterns, connecting systems, even repairing some of the broken electronics as they moved. "Is this repairing itself?" she whispered into her comms. Her co-pilot stayed silent, probably staring at the shuttle monitor in horror. Kira crouched near a broken control panel. With her gloved hands, she gently touched a crawling parasite. It recoiled slightly, then pulsed, sending a faint spark through the metal. She frowned, intrigued. A human engineer could never make a system this adaptive, but these creatures, they could. "Interesting," she muttered, almost to herself. Most people would run at this point. Most people didn't see opportunity where others saw danger, but Kira had learned that being afraid never paid. Curiosity and courage did. Her flashlight caught a strange glimmer further down the corridor. She moved toward it, careful not to disturb the parasites more than necessary. The source was a large viewport, cracked but intact. Beyond it, she could see the expanse of space and the twisted skeletons of long-abandoned satellites floating like forgotten toys. But something else shimmered faintly inside the ship. The outline of the ship's AI core, its containment field cracked but still glowing faintly. Her pulse quickened. This was no ordinary salvage mission. The AI, even damaged, could be invaluable. She approached slowly, feeling a mix of awe and fear. The parasites were everywhere now, crawling over walls, ceilings, and floors, integrating with every system they could touch. Some of them pulsed, almost in rhythm, as if aware of her presence. She knelt beside the core and pulled out her scanner. It beeped rapidly. The core was partially functional, its systems damaged but not dead. And the parasites, they were interacting with it, almost symbiotically. She could feel the possibilities opening before her eyes. If she could harness them, if she could control the parasites, she smiled, a dangerous gleam in her eyes. "This ship isn't dead," she whispered. "It's waiting." Hours passed as she explored. She marked safe paths, analyzed which systems were too dangerous to touch, and recorded every movement of the parasites. They were intelligent, adaptive, and fast. One wrong move and she could be trapped or worse. But with patience, she began to see a pattern. The parasites seemed to respond to electrical impulses and even to her own movements. With the right commands, she could guide them. She worked through the night, her fingers flying over consoles, reconnecting broken circuits with her tools. Sparks flew, alarms buzzed faintly, and the parasites reacted instantly, weaving into the metal to stabilize the damaged systems. For the first time, Kira realized something incredible. The parasites weren't just a threat, they were a potential weapon. A distant vibration shook the ship. She froze, her comms crackled. "Salvager, we've detected movement," a voice warned. Kira's eyes narrowed. She wasn't alone. Other scavengers had tracked the ship's location, drawn by its rumored value. And they wouldn't hesitate to take it by force. Most humans would be outnumbered, outgunned, and dead before they even reached the bridge. But Kira wasn't most humans. Her hands moved faster now, reconnecting a secondary power line. The ship hummed faintly and the AI core pulsed in response. The parasites seemed to sense her purpose, clustering around circuits, ready to react. She smiled again. This was no longer just a salvage mission. This was a chance to turn a forgotten warship into something alive, something deadly. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Kira crouched behind a console, heart pounding. A group of scavengers entered, rifles raised. She held her breath, then tapped into the nearest control panel. Tiny pulses shot through the circuits, and the parasites responded instantly, creeping along the floor, walls, and ceiling toward the intruders. A spark erupted beneath a scavenger's foot. He yelped and jumped, and another pulse sent his rifle sparking. The parasites moved like liquid metal, terrifying and precise. The intruders froze, unsure if the ship itself was attacking them. Kira seized her chance. She darted past them, moving deeper into the ship. The parasites followed her commands, isolating the scavengers and cutting off their retreat. Within moments, the intruders fled, leaving their gear behind. Panting, Kira reached the AI core again. She placed her hands on the containment field, feeling the pulses of energy. "I think I can talk to you," she murmured. The AI responded faintly, a crackling voice in her mind. "Human, clever, resourceful. You have survived what others could not. You may be the one capable of awakening this ship." Kira's eyes widened. This was more than she had ever dreamed. The AI recognized her skill, her ingenuity, the very essence of human adaptability. She could rebuild the ship, merge the parasites with its systems, and create a weapon no one could imagine. But first, she had to survive the night. The ship groaned as it drifted in space, the parasites crawling over walls, responding to her subtle commands. Kira sat back against the metal, exhaustion threatening to overtake her. She had stared into the heart of danger and seen possibility. She had stared into the heart of a dead warship and found life. Her comm crackled again. "Salvager, more movement detected, be careful." Kira smiled faintly. "Let them come," she whispered. "They have no idea what they're up against." And for the first time in decades, the warship stirred. Its systems, once dead, hummed faintly. The parasites shifted, adapting, ready. Kira had discovered its secret, and she would turn it into something the galaxy had never seen before. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Inside, a human mechanic and an army of parasites waited, and the galaxy would never be the same. Kira Vance sat in the control room of the warship, her hands flying across broken panels. The parasites moved in rhythmic waves across the circuits, responding to her every command. She had spent the night learning their patterns, mapping their behavior, and carefully coaxing them to cooperate. The AI core hummed faintly, its presence like a pulse at the back of her mind. "This is going to work," she muttered to herself, her voice echoing in the empty room. "I just need to merge them fully with the ship's systems." Outside the viewport, the stars blurred past as the ship drifted silently toward the outer rim. Kira had plotted a course to a remote asteroid field, a safe place to test her ideas without interference. The scavengers who had stumbled onto her yesterday would likely regroup, and pirates were notorious for tracking abandoned human ships. But Kira was ready. This warship, once a neglected relic, was becoming something entirely new. Her first task was stabilizing the parasite networks. She connected the last few damaged conduits to the AI core. Sparks flew, lighting the dark corners of the control room, but the parasites reacted immediately, crawling along the new connections to reinforce them. Where human engineers would have required hours or days of repairs, the parasites completed the work in minutes. Kira watched with fascination. She held her palm above a control panel, sending a subtle signal, and the parasites moved in unison, forming a living circuit. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Humans had built machines, yes, but life, adaptable, responsive, intelligent, was a level above anything machines alone could achieve. The AI spoke, voice low and crackling. "You are combining life with machinery. It is unorthodox, but effective. Your ingenuity is human. It is inspiring." Kira smiled. "I know." Hours passed and she began to explore offensive applications. The parasites could interface with weapons systems, rerouting power to energy cannons and missile launchers. A single command could allow the ship to anticipate incoming attacks, target enemies before they could react, and repair itself during battle. To test the systems, she launched a small drone in the asteroid field. It was old, damaged, but functional. The parasites moved through the drone's circuits as easily as the ship's, boosting its speed and firepower. Within minutes, the tiny drone obliterated several abandoned mining drones that drifted in the field. Kira's grin widened. This isn't just a repair. This is an army. Her attention shifted as the ship's sensors picked up movement, a faint blip on the edge of the asteroid field. More scavengers. They had likely followed the warship's signal from yesterday, unaware of how far Kira had progressed. "They just don't learn," she muttered, tapping commands into a console. The parasites responded instantly, weaving along circuits to weapons bays, energy conduits, and propulsion systems. The ship seemed to hum with anticipation, alive in a way Kira had never imagined. When the scavengers entered the field, they were met by sudden explosions from the asteroids. The ship's automated defenses, now powered by the parasites, used precise force to push them off course. Kira leaned back, her eyes sharp. Every movement of the intruders was anticipated, every attack countered, but she held back the full force. She wanted to see how they would react. The scavengers regrouped, pressing forward with makeshift weapons and boarding shuttles. Kira activated a secondary system. The parasites surged along the hull, crawling over external armor and scanning for weak points. Within moments, tiny energy pulses disabled the engines of the enemy shuttles. They were stranded, floating helplessly among jagged rocks. "Not bad for a ship nobody thought was worth anything," Kira murmured. Her mind raced, imagining what could happen if the AI and the parasites worked together fully. Humans had survived worse than this before, but no one had ever combined biology and technology this way. She returned to the control room and began the integration sequence. Panels opened, circuits connected, and the parasites spread like liquid metal, infiltrating every system. The AI's voice grew stronger. "Human, your methods are unconventional, yet effective. Together we may surpass anything the galaxy has seen." A shiver ran down her spine. This was no longer just a ship. It was a weapon, yes, but more than that. A living system, responsive, intelligent, and deadly. And at the heart of it was her. Suddenly, the ship shook violently. Kira's stomach dropped as she realized the scavengers had attempted a direct boarding. One of their ships had managed to latch onto the hull. "Not today," she whispered. Fingers flying, she sent a command through the parasite network. The creatures surged along the hull, infiltrating the enemy ship's circuits. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and the boarding clamps disengaged. The ship floated away, disabled and harmless. Kira exhaled slowly. "You see. That's why humans never give up," she said, smiling faintly. "We improvise, we adapt." She spent the next several hours fine-tuning the parasites' abilities. They could now manipulate energy, anticipate enemy movements, and even self-repair damaged areas. Kira tested them on a small scale, simulating attacks from multiple directions. Every time the parasites adapted, every time the ship responded as if it had a mind of its own. The AI spoke again. Human, I did not anticipate this level of creativity. You are evolving this warship beyond its original design. Kira felt a rush of pride. She wasn't just repairing a relic. She was creating something entirely new. Something that could survive, adapt, and fight in ways no conventional warship could. Then came the hardest part, the parasites themselves. They were intelligent, yes, but they were also unpredictable. If she pushed too far, they could overwhelm the ship or worse, turn against her. Kira spent hours studying them, learning how to communicate subtle signals through energy pulses and vibrations. Slowly, she built trust. Slowly, they responded not just to commands but to intentions. By the time she stopped to rest, the ship was nearly fully functional. Lights flickered across the hull, engines hummed steadily, and the parasites swarmed like a living shield. Kira allowed herself a small smile. Tomorrow, we begin the real tests. That night, she dreamed of the galaxy watching. A lone human, standing against impossible odds, controlling a warship that was alive in ways no alien or human could have imagined. She dreamed of pirates and scavengers being outmaneuvered and outsmarted, of the galaxy seeing what humans could achieve when resourceful, bold, and relentless. Morning came, and with it, the next challenge. Sensors picked up multiple hostile signals approaching the asteroid field. A small pirate fleet had caught wind of the derelict warship. They expected easy prey. They did not expect Kira Vance, and they did not expect the ship itself. "Time to wake up properly," she muttered, activating the AI. The parasites surged, crawling across panels, through conduits and into weapon systems. Energy cannons lit up, shields strengthened, and the ship seemed to breathe. Kira felt a strange thrill. This was the culmination of every long night of repairs, every risky decision, every daring maneuver. Humans had always been underestimated, but now she and this living warship were about to prove exactly how dangerous that assumption was. As the pirate fleet approached, Kira leaned forward in the captain's chair. Her fingers danced across the controls, sending subtle commands to the parasites. They flowed like water, forming patterns, reinforcing systems, and preparing to strike. The first shots rang out. The pirates expected resistance, yes, but they did not expect the precision. The ship's weapons fired with uncanny accuracy, disabling several ships before they could react. Shields adapted instantly to incoming fire. Energy pulses from the parasites disrupted electronics, leaving enemy systems blinking and useless. Kira's grin widened. This is only the beginning. The AI spoke, now more clearly than ever. Human, your instincts, creativity, and courage are beyond calculation. Together we are formidable. Kira's eyes glinted. Formidable indeed. Hours passed in a blur of strategy, adaptation, and overwhelming force. The pirate fleet was destroyed or scattered, leaving only wreckage and floating debris. Kira allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. She had not only survived, but she had proven the warship's potential. But deep down, she knew the galaxy would not forget this. Word would spread of the human mechanic who tamed a warship, merged it with alien life, and turned it into a superweapon. She felt a surge of pride and anticipation. The next steps would be even more daring, expanding the ship's capabilities, testing limits, and preparing for the challenges the galaxy would throw at her. And as the stars passed by outside the viewport, Kira Vance, human mechanic and architect of a new kind of warship, smiled. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could really do. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, distant and cold. Kira Vance sat at the helm of the warship, now fully alive in a way no machine had ever been. The parasites pulsed across the ship's circuits, its weapons and engines humming with precision. The AI's voice was strong, almost proud. "Human, you have surpassed expectations. Together we may be unstoppable. Kira smiled faintly, gripping the controls. Unstoppable, let's see if the galaxy agrees. It began with a single alert. The sensors blinked red, multiple fleets approaching, each larger than the last. Word of the awakened warship had spread. Pirates, scavengers, and mercenary fleets converged, thinking they could claim the ship and its mysterious power. They were wrong. "This is it," she whispered. "Time to show them what humans can do." The ship pulsed as if it understood her perfectly. The parasites surged through the conduits, spreading into every system, every weapon, every shield. Kira had perfected communication with them. Every command she issued was instantaneously executed. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a living, thinking, adaptive organism, and she was its heart. The first wave arrived, dozens of small attack ships, sleek and fast. Their weapons opened fire, lasers streaking toward her. Kira's eyes narrowed. She tapped commands into the console. Energy shields flared and reformed with the precision of thought. The parasites moved into the weapon systems, enhancing targeting and power. The warship responded like a predator. Small ships were caught in magnetic traps, spun away from her hull. Others had their engines short-circuited by precise energy pulses. Within minutes, the first wave was annihilated without a single scratch to the ship. "Impressive," the AI said. "Human intuition is remarkable." Kira allowed herself a grin. "You get used to it," she said. "Humans survive because we don't just fight, we think, adapt, and innovate." The next wave was larger. Heavier ships, more heavily armed, approached from multiple vectors. Kira's mind raced. She didn't panic. She never panicked. Humans thrived in chaos. With careful gestures, she guided the parasites through the ship, creating a network that anticipated enemy strategies before they even realized them. The ship's cannons fired in coordinated volleys. The parasites manipulated energy flows, overloading shields of enemy ships, then repairing her own in seconds. Missiles launched automatically, guided by adaptive systems that could predict evasive maneuvers. Each enemy attack was met with an immediate counter. And yet, Kira knew she couldn't just rely on defense. Humans weren't meant to be caged. She pushed the ship forward, using the asteroids in the nearby field as cover. The parasites controlled the hull's external nanostructures, making the ship almost invisible to sensors. Enemy ships struggled to find her, firing blindly. She laughed softly. "Come on, show me what you've got." The battle escalated. Fleets collided, laser fire lit the void, and explosions dotted the darkness. But every time the warship adapted. The parasites repaired damaged systems instantly, rerouted power, and even manipulated the enemy's own electronics to misfire or malfunction. Kira realized something extraordinary. The ship had learned. It could anticipate, respond, and evolve its tactics in real time. The AI spoke almost urgently now. "Human, the scale of the threat is unprecedented, but your creativity is beyond calculation. We can win." Kira's heart pounded with exhilaration. She was tired, yes, but alive with purpose. This was what humans did. No alien fleet could match human ingenuity when combined with determination, quick thinking, and the ability to improvise. She guided the ship through the chaos, a blur of movement and strategy. The parasites formed adaptive shields around vulnerable sections, projected energy pulses that disrupted enemy communications, and manipulated weapons systems with perfect timing. Each fleet that approached fell before her, unable to predict her next move. Then came the flagship of the pirate coalition. Massive, heavily armored, a floating fortress bristling with weapons. Kira knew brute force alone wouldn't win this fight. She needed strategy, cunning, and improvisation, human traits that no one could predict. She studied the ship's patterns, observing its weaknesses. Its weapons systems were heavy and slow. Its shields were strong but rigid. Kira tapped into the parasite network. They slithered along conduits into sensors and finally into the ship's communication signals, subtly disrupting guidance systems. The flagship fired blindly. Kira's warship dodged with effortless precision, energy flowing like liquid through its circuits. Then she struck. A coordinated attack from multiple vectors, perfectly timed pulses, and adaptive energy strikes breached the flagship's hull. Explosions rocked the massive ship. Smaller enemy vessels were caught in the fallout, and panic rippled through the remaining fleet. Kira pressed forward, pushing the warship systems to their limit. She guided the parasites into a final surge, overloading the flagship's core with energy pulses and controlled disruptions. The explosion that followed lit the void like a dying star. Debris drifted silently, the remaining ship scattering in fear. She exhaled, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion and exhilaration. The galaxy had just witnessed something new, something human. The AI spoke again, calm now, almost reflective. Human, this is remarkable. You have combined life, machine, and ingenuity. This is evolution. Kira leaned back, staring out at the stars. Not evolution, she said quietly. Human ingenuity. She had turned a neglected warship into a superweapon, but more importantly, she had proven a point. Humans could survive, adapt, and conquer even when outnumbered and underestimated. Strength wasn't just about firepower. It was about cleverness, courage, and creativity. The parasites pulsed softly across the ship systems, now fully integrated and responsive to her commands. The warship itself seemed to breathe, alive and aware, ready to follow her instincts without hesitation. It was more than a weapon. It was a partner, an extension of her own mind. Kira smiled faintly. She knew the galaxy would remember this day. Humans, once dismissed as fragile or predictable, had created something no alien fleet could have imagined. A mechanic, a derelict warship, and a swarm of parasites had turned the tables completely. As she set a course back toward human-controlled space, she thought about the future. There would be more challenges, more threats, and more battles. But now she was ready. Humanity had a new champion, a living warship, guided by a human mind capable of anything. Her co-pilot's voice came over the comms, shaky but impressed. "Salvager, that was unbelievable," Kira chuckled softly. "Just another day," she said. "Humans never quit, and we never stop thinking." The warship pulsed again, almost in agreement. Kira leaned back in her chair, exhausted but triumphant. The stars stretched endlessly before her, full of danger, opportunity, and possibility. And for the first time in decades, the galaxy would see humans in a new light. They were not just survivors. They were creators, strategists, innovators. And with ingenuity as their weapon, there was nothing they could not achieve. The warship hummed, alive and powerful, carrying Kira forward into a future she would shape herself. And somewhere deep in the endless void of space, the galaxy began to take notice. Humanity was no longer just a footnote, it was a force to be reckoned with. Kira Vance, mechanic and architect of a living warship, smiled. This was only the beginning. The stars waited, endless and indifferent. But now humanity had a champion among them, ready to carve its mark into the cosmos.